Welcome back to the How to Podcast series. I'm glad to have you here. We're going to talk about naming your show. And if you're new to here and you're new to starting a podcast, this is going to be perfect for you as you're planning out your podcast. I have a lot of great new people in the How to Podcast family on the beginning stages of starting a podcast, which makes me so happy because we need more people in podcasting. There are more listeners than there are shows and active shows. And we want to make sure that we have the amazing content there for our listeners when they come and show up and you're there because you have a great podcast. You're building audience, you're building content, you're building community, you're doing it all the right way. And for them to find you, you need a great name for your show. So let's jump into this today. And I have a pro tip. I'm doing this little thing here. Watch. I'm doing a pro tip at the end of the episode. So on what you can do to make sure your name is clear and to avoid frustration for your audience, a pro tip at the end. All those listening who have a podcast, what is Dave doing right now? Right. Try this on your show and see if it works. For you listening here, thank you for being here. At the end of the episode, there's a pro tip I'd love for you to check out. And you're going to need to listen to the end to hear it. I'm not going to give you a way to skip to that spot. You're going to have to stick around. So there's that. We're going to jump in on 4 must-have and 4 might-harm considerations for a great podcast name on the How to Podcast series. Glad to have you here. Let's jump in. Naming your podcast. Now, whether you've been podcasting for years or you're going to start a show this week, you got to name your show. It has to have a name. It can't be blank. It's got to have a name. And if you've been doing this for a long time and you're like, I think it might be time to tweak the name of my show. Well, there's a few things I want to throw at you. 4 things to consider and maybe 4 things to possibly avoid as gentle recommendations for you to consider as a podcaster so that people can find your show. I want people to be able to find you. Now, people are going to tell you, some people are going to tell you that there's no search on Apple, there's no search on Spotify or Audible or all these places where you can listen to your show. And I challenge that because I have proof from this very show that people have found this show because of searching how to podcast. It's in the name. It's how people would come to a search engine and find a show on how to podcast. Pretty obvious, pretty on the nose, wouldn't you say? It's right there in the name and it works, people. It works. And people have found me on Apple. People have found the show on Spotify. People have found the show on YouTube and all kinds of different places simply because of the name. And I want your podcast to be just as findable and searchable on these apps. Even if there's a guru telling you there is no way to find podcasts on these apps, they are what I like to call wrong because I have proof it works. So if you do things in a logical, thoughtful way, the opportunity for you to be found is there when you pick a good name for your show. Is the name of my show amazing? Not really. It's pretty basic. And that might be part of the secret sauce to a great name for your show as you contemplate what you're going to call your podcast. Naming your podcast is one of the most important decisions you're going to make as a podcast creator. And a great name can help your show stand out. It can attract you and your ideal audience, and it can make it easy for listeners to find you. It can also be a great competitive edge against all of the other podcasts that talk about what you do. For me, all of the other podcasts that talk about podcasting, and there are a ton, my show stands out. The amount of episodes, the guests co-host on the show, the topics we cover, the naming of the episodes, all of these things work together. And this is what I want for you, is for you to inherit great results when people try to find you based on the name of your show. So a practical framework to guide you along with some common pitfalls to avoid here in the How to Podcast series. We're going to start with 4 must-have framework ideas for a great podcast name. Let's jump in. I notice that I say let's jump in often, so let's jump in. The first one is around search-friendly and being discoverable. Your name of your show will benefit if it's search-friendly. When you create the name of your show. Now, if I created the Dave Campbell podcast, it doesn't tell you a lot. What happens on the show? I have no idea, and I don't know who Dave Campbell is. How dare you? You don't know who I am, and you don't know what I'm talking about, just from the name, the Dave Campbell podcast. Again, I'm not Joe Rogan, and I don't have that kind of gravitas. There's a word for you. You can borrow that. I don't have that. So the Dave Campbell Show makes absolutely no sense and very little discoverability, and nobody's typing that in to a search engine to find me. How to podcast, people are typing, and people are finding me. Use keywords as your target audience would use, the same terminology they would use, maybe not like the high level that you understand as an expert for your topic, but the basic generic words with someone with less knowledge or information or expertise that you have in their terminology. How would they find your show? We did an interesting beginning to an episode recently where I used marketing speech. And I'll pull it back in here again so you can hear the intro for that episode. But this is some of the things I would avoid in some of these terminologies and these words when you create your podcast title. Okay, so try to avoid some of this muddy mess, word salad that many marketing people will tell you to use, or they use themselves, which are trendy words that come and go and people don't always resonate with. But here you go. I'm gonna give you the intro from one of the other episodes where I'm going to demonstrate for you what not to do when naming your show. Okay, here's a sample. Here we go.
Welcome, visionary thought leaders and paradigm-shifting game changers, to the synergistically optimized, ultra-premium, next-level auditory experience you never knew you needed. This is the How to Podcast series, where we leverage best-in-class, holistic storytelling methodologies to supercharge your brand equity and maximize ROI on your personal narrative podcast. Each week, we'll deep dive into actionable blue sky ideation, unpacking granular, scalable, and frictionless solutions to pain points you didn't even know you had. Our curated roster of industry-agnostic, cross-vertical unicorn guests will empower you to 10x your mindset, pivot your bandwidth, and disrupt the status quo with hyper-personalized, value-added takeaways. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button, activate your notification ecosystem, and join our exclusive, invite-only, high-engagement community for exponential growth hacking and next-gen networking opportunities. So buckle up, because you're about to embark on a journey of unprecedented, omni-channel, end-to-end podcast excellence that will elevate your KPIs and amplify your personal brand to stratospheric heights. Let's optimize, monetize, and revolutionize together.
So there you go. That's Marketing Speak 101. And oh my gosh, is that so off-putting? Not pudding like you eat, but off-putting like, oh my gosh, what, really? We don't talk like that in regular language. And again, if we are coming at it from a high level of information and knowledge, and you're a professor and you've been to every university in the world and you've got 35,000 degrees behind your name, you might have this extreme knowledge and you use words that nobody ever uses. And when you name your show that way, people aren't naturally typing in those words to find your show. Having a show name that's accessible to others is a great way to be found. You're using the terminology of what I would say I represent, the common people, people like us who are on the journey to find our next favorite podcast, but we don't really have the words or the knowledge that you have. We're going to come and learn those words by listening to your show, but put the name of your show into the context of someone with less knowledge than you, searching for your topic. It'll help you to be found. Use keywords that are listener-centric. They're focused on the listener. They're not focused on you. They're focused on what people would type into naturally with no prompts. They would search on their own with no one holding their hand. That's what we need to do, is to approach it that way. How would people actually type in this search to find you on apps like Google or podcast apps, and avoid obscure references, inside knowledge, inside jokes, things that need to be explained for relevance? Avoid those things. Unless your audience is already up on all this information and you really want to narrow your focus and your audience to a very specific audience that does not include people who are curious about your topic without the knowledge, and you only want to focus on people who understand what that acronym means or the inside knowledge means, you decide how big your audience is from the beginning and play with the title of your episode in your podcast. Play with your episode name, because it's going to help you to be found. As well, use simple, clear, and easy to spell names for your show. When you're naming your show, choose a name that's easy to pronounce, easy to spell, easy to say, because you're going to say it often, and very easy to remember. If you want your show to be shareable between two people who don't really know much about the topic that you talk about, but want to share the name of your show, make it easy to say between two people when you're not there to prompt them. Avoid puns or wordplay that could be really confusing when heard out loud and require someone to explain it. If I need to explain to you the name of my show and what it means, I'm going to potentially lose you. And someone looking for me might not find me. If your podcast name needs an explanation, you might want to rethink the name of your show. Also, is the podcast name that you're considering or you have, is it targeted and is it relevant? Make sure that the name of your show gives a clear idea of what your show's topic, tone, and target audience includes, and let the title help listeners to opt in or opt out of your show at a simple glance without even clicking play. They just see the title of your show, they see the artwork that represents the title of your podcast, and at a glance, because you only get a few opportunities to be in front of people, they can say, this is for me, this is not for me, or maybe I'm just curious, and in that moment you might gain a new listener. But at a glance, I should be able to look at the name of your show and go, nope, I'm not interested in that topic. Off I go. Make sure your show is clear enough to somebody new, again, unprompted, without anyone holding their hand or explaining whatever. Your show speaks for itself, just by the name. Again, the Dave Campbell Show, nobody cares about that. And if you have the podcast called The Dave Campbell Show, you should have me on as a guest, because my name is Dave Campbell. The last part in here is as some suggestions to consider when naming your show is to be unique, but not overcomplicated when naming your podcast. Your name for your show should stand out from the crowd. Don't sacrifice clarity for your show for cleverness. People don't always understand when you're being clever. And when it's confusing, you're going to lose. That's what they say, right? If you confuse, you lose. That's what's going to happen for your show. If your podcast title is oddly strange to someone and they don't really get it, could spark curiosity. I get it. But it could also have the reverse effect. And are you willing to gamble on cleverness for your show? check for existing podcasts or brands that have similar names to avoid any kind of legal issues, potentially, or being confused in the search engine results for some other show. Especially if that show is of lower value, or they're inactive, or they talk about a topic that's completely unrelated to what you're doing and could be confused for content, could be confused for explicit ratings, could be confused by any number of things. You do not want to confuse your audience at all. And I know it's hard to come up with a clever new name when there's so many podcasts, but it is possible. This show was possible. Howtopodcast.ca was possible. So if this is possible, I'm pretty sure your podcast name with a couple tweaks could be a reality for you and your podcast. So that is 4 must-have framework ideas for a good podcast name. It's got to be search-friendly. It's got to be discoverable. That's the first one. It's got to be simple, clear, and easy to spell. It has to be targeted and relevant. And lastly, unique but not overcomplicated. So that's the 4 things to consider for a great podcast name. But what? Hey, wait, whoa. What about 4 things that might harm your podcast naming? What are we going to cover here? First, odd spellings and letter number combinations. So a podcast called Creative Minds. Okay, maybe it's about crafting, it's about being a creative person, mindset. It could be all kinds of things for creative minds. But take the letter A out of creative and put the number 8. So now it's CRE, the number 8, TIVE, minds. Now, if I have to do that in every episode, hey, welcome to the Creative Minds podcast. Remember, that's CRE, the number 8, TIVE, minds.com. That's going to get old very fast. And the potential of people trying to type in the actual word creative with an A, not an 8, you might not be found because I forgot to type in the 8 and replace the A with an 8. Creative Minds, just CREATIVE, might be a better choice for you than to get all fancy and throw that 8 in there. You could maybe throw it into your artwork or something else, but the name of your show should be dead simple. Or what about, there's a hosting site, and they actually make fun of themselves, but it's Blueberry, BLUBRRY, and they say they do that because the E's were very expensive. But as a person who doesn't understand that there's no E's in the word blueberry, what a frustration it is to try to find these people. Now, it's something they can overcome with advertisements and all of that. It's a way for them to get around it, but make it easy for people. Include the E's. BLUEBERRY is a lot easier for people with very little knowledge about your show than BLUBRRY. See what we're saying here? You want to make it easy for people. So avoid weird letter number combinations in your name. Avoid dropping vowels or letters altogether. If it makes it hard for people to spell and explain, and you're going to say it on the mic every episode, you're going to get tired. You're going to get very tired of doing that. Listeners might not be able to find you, and if they have to guess at the spelling, they may guess wrong, and they may never find you. So stop putting those weird number combos together. They may not be serving you well long term. And another thing to avoid that might harm your podcast name is if your name is actually too generic or too vague. Names like, well, this is interesting because there's actually a conference called this, The Podcast Show. Okay, The Podcast Show, is it a podcast about podcasting? Is it a podcast about shows? I don't know what that is. Or Talk Time. Okay, this doesn't stand out. This doesn't help me to know what the content's about. Talk Time. I don't know what that is, right? So again, as somebody who doesn't know you and unprompted, they might not search Talk Time. They might not search The Podcast Show. unless you go to the conference called The Podcast Show. You want your listeners to know what your show is and what it's all about without, again, being prompted and having someone explain to them what they're looking at when they're searching. So don't be too generic and don't be too vague. As well, avoid long or complicated titles. Long names are really hard to remember. If you put yourself into the place of your listener, long names are hard to remember. They're hard to say, and they may get cut off in some podcast apps when you only have a certain number of characters that are visible on a player. Keep your podcast name concise and punchy. People need to be able to remember it. And if your name of your show sounds like something else, that really could be a hard thing for people. They're going to get mixed up. They're going to compare you to somebody else. Avoid making it confusing for your audience, and stop with the long, really extensive titles. Be careful with that, because it's really hard for people to remember the name of your show. And then lastly would be to avoid using anything that's trademarked or popular brand names in the name of your podcast. So I was working with one person, and they were going to use the name of a streaming service in the title of their show, and they were going to kind of cast it in a more negative light, that this specific streaming site is not the best. And my feedback was, in this situation, was maybe it should be more about streaming in general, beyond just one specific platform, that all streaming is negative in that context for that show. And to avoid calling out a specific brand, there's a chance they might not like that. And if you decided to use their logo in your logo, then you're in some pretty dark, dangerous waters, because you don't have permission to use their name, and then speak ill of them might not be a great combo when you're starting a show. So consider that. Avoid using popular brand names in the name of your show. Now, there's people who do movie and television review shows, and you're using the name of the show in the review. Interesting if you can use something that's a little bit related to the show without using the exact name of the show. Now, there is bonus points by using the exact name of the show, because people are searching that. So if I'm doing a podcast about the TV show Cheers from back in the day, then having the word Cheers in the name of my show would make sense. So you do you, boo. I guess that's how they would say that. And do what works for you. But just remember that when you start using someone else's brand, just be careful. Avoid names that could cause any legal trouble or any confusion with other existing brands. If you're not them, you shouldn't pretend to be them. And always do a search to make sure your name is available. I would do that search through GoDaddy.com as a website, for example, or on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, on YouTube. Also, be another great place to search. Any of these places will bring back results where you're looking for a specific name. Then use those as tools to help you identify the potential for confusion with another show. A pro tip. Here we are, everybody. You got to it. The pro tip that I promised at the beginning of the episode. You found it. So congratulations. You're still here, and we're best buddies now. The pro tip. I want you to put yourself into the shoes of a listener and do this as a test for any name you're thinking about for your show. Turn on your voice recognition system. People will have different ones in their home. You know, that little tube looks like a thing you'd put tennis balls in, that thing that comes to life when you say its name. I won't do it now because I might spark yours if you have one. But use that service and ask it the name of your show. Use the name of your show in a search on those voice recognition tools and see what comes back. If the person in the tube cannot give you a good response for what you're saying, and they mix it up with something else. So it sounds like you're saying this, but you're not. You're saying that. That's what your audience is going to experience when they do what you're doing right now as a test. So my suggestion is to use these voice recognition options so that you can have the listener experience of trying to find your show using such a service. If the search results are frustrating or inadequate, your listeners will have the same problem you're having while you test out this name. This is a quick way to test out and see if your name is easy to find and easy to pronounce, and that the person in the tube you're talking to can understand what you're saying. Again, let's go back to that creative minds with a number 8. What is that person in the tube going to come back with? Right? So keep that in mind. A quick recap. Do these things. Ready? Do these. Do make it simple for the name of your show. Do make it clear. Do make it targeted. And do make it search friendly. Don't use odd spellings. Don't use generic terms. Don't use long titles. And don't use trademark names that you do not own. A great podcast name is your first handshake with your audience. So make it count. The one extra thing I'll throw here as a bonus tip is you can have the name of your show. So the How to Podcast series, it's the name of the show. You can also put a colon, those 2 dots, one on top of each other, and then you can then extend the name of your show and make it more clarifying as to what it's about. Authors do this all the time. You'll see the name of their show, the name of their book, and you'll see the title extension, which talks about more context about the name of the book. Happens all the time. It works. And that same naming process for a book could easily be translated to your show. So again, this show is a How to Podcast series. And then I have my extension says revolving guest co-hosts, podcast tips, and a community for podcasters. All of those things beyond the name of the show, the How to Podcast series, all those other terminology, revolving guest co-hosts, podcast tips, and a community for podcasters are searchable terms that any of those could bring somebody to my show. When I come on the mic, you don't hear me say, welcome to the How to Podcast series, revolving guest co-hosts, podcast tips, and a community for podcasters. No, all you hear me say is, welcome to the How to Podcast series. My name is Dave. Today we're going to talk about this. Everything that comes after the name of my show, the How to Podcast series, can be tweaked at any time without impacting the name of the podcast. I can jump into that revolving guest co-hosts, podcast tips, and a community for podcasters and change out and swap out any of those terminologies, any of those words at any time if I want to get a boost in a different area. So this whole thing around podcast tips, highly searchable. People are looking for that. I have it in the name of my show. I have it in the name of my episodes, and it brings back great results for me if you search podcast tips. It works. And there's other people who brag about their name, their podcast showing up for podcast tips. And it's got to say, this show ranks higher than they do for the thing that they say they rank high on, simply because I'm using it in the name of the show. So again, you could have the name of your show and then a subtitle, which could easily be adjusted and tweaked and played with every month, every week, every year, whatever you like. You can go in there and tweak that, but keep the name of your show at the beginning, and then a subtitle, just like a book, can be tweaked and played with anytime you want without harming your show and could get you in front of other people. So what would be the extension for your show? So if your podcast is called, The Book Podcast. Okay, well, The Book Podcast, what kind of books? Who are the authors? Is it an interview? What can you tell me beyond The Book Podcast that would make me want to press play? It's a historical fiction podcast for new authors. That's great as an extension, right? Because now I know exactly what's going to happen in the show without even pressing play. And if I don't like historical fiction, I opt out. If I love historical fiction, I'm opting in. And I didn't even listen to your show yet. See what's happening there? Make it simple for people to find you, to opt in, to opt out, or simply to be curious. If you need help with the name of your show, maybe again, you've been doing this forever, or you're going to launch a podcast in the next few months, and you want to kind of sit together and share some ideas, remember, there's no rules. You can do whatever you want. You can name your show whatever you want. If you make something confusing for people, it just might take more time to explain and build community around the name. And if you make your podcast name dead simple so that people just understand exactly what the show's about, you might find it easier to find traction with your show by making it easy for people to understand. So keep that in mind. You can do whatever you want. But if you want some feedback, you want to sit together and share ideas and get feedback on ideas for the name of your show, always available at howtopodcast.ca. There's a calendar link right on my website. You don't even have to talk to me. You can just jump in my calendar. You and I can get together and chat about the name of your show. I'm on a mission for this show to talk to 5 listeners every month. And so far, it's been awesome. Great interactions with people just like you. And I know that it's a little weird to reach out to the host of a podcast and have time with them, but I promise I'll be on my best behavior and we'll have a great conversation together if you go to howtopodcast.ca. Calendar's right there, like I mentioned. I'd love to talk to you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for pressing play, and congratulations on your show. Whether you've been doing this forever or you're going to start tomorrow, you're in the right place here at the How to Podcast series. Thanks for being here. Take care. Hey, thanks for being here. Thank you for listening to the end of the podcast. You're here with me. I'm so grateful. I want to put something in front of you. For the person that's listened this far, you're my new best friend. So what I'm trying to do every month is I have a goal, and you can help me with this goal. Very simple. What I'm trying to do is have 5 conversations this month with listeners of the How to Podcast series. You don't have to have a podcast to respond. This can be the first time ever that we're going to have a conversation, but I'm looking to talk to 5 people. Now, you're still here, so you're one of the people that I would love to talk to next. So on my howtopodcast.ca website is a calendar, and I'd love to have you respond on howtopodcast.ca. Just click the calendar link, set up time in my calendar, and in the comment section for the meeting, just put something like listener. That's it. If you have a show, put it in the comments too so I can go listen. But if you don't, I just want to talk to 5 listeners every month from now to the end of the month. So if you're listening to me right now, you're the person I want to talk to. And through howtopodcast.ca, you and I can get together, chat about the show, chat about your journey as a podcaster. Where are you at? What do you need the show to become for you? What's missing? Your feedback. I just want to meet you. And as podcasters, I would encourage you to do something similar to this in your podcast so that you can meet and interact with your audience. So, howtopodcast.ca, I'm looking to talk to 5 people every month, and I would love for you to be one of them. Reach out. It's free. I'm not selling you anything. I just want to talk to you at howtopodcast.ca. Let's get in the calendar and chat. Thanks for listening.